Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the eCommerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our incredible next guest, Anubhav Raina from Trika Technologies. Welcome, Anubhav.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And you're based in the great state of New York, right?
I'm in New Jersey, based in New Jersey. Yeah, we're
Yep.
headquartered in New Jersey, yes.
But very close there to New York.
Yeah, very close to New York, yes.
Good, greater New York. Love it. Love it. Listen, we're gonna have a great conversation today about what Trika is, what you do, how you do it, why you do it the way you do it. You have this tagline for Trika: intent, insight, innovation. I quite like that. We're gonna explore that a little bit more. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you got into this industry? If I look back across your background, your history, you have been in the C-suite for a very long time. Pretty much the entirety of your career you spent in the C-suite, whether it be CTO, COO, CIO, and now president and CEO of Trika. But how did you come to be in this wonderful world of e-com and digital?
Yeah, so I graduated in 98 from college in India. And I worked in India for a couple of years and I moved to US as a technical person. A lot of us started as a technical resource, was a developer, moved up the ranks very quickly in the company that I worked for in New York. It was a purely commerce focused company, SI, and $0 to $30 million. So I was pretty successful in doing that. I was the CTO for last 4 years or so in the company. And then the owners of the company asked me if I was interested in starting a new company that focused on cloud-based technologies. So that's where I started the first company with them. I was a minority shareholder. Now, a client of mine from Sam's Club, who started the company with me, and we focused purely on cloud-based technologies, which were just coming up at that time. And before that era, it was mostly your on-prem solutions, very big monolithic solutions. And the things have started to move to the cloud, and some of the early comers were there. And we invested in a couple of e-commerce platforms. We trained a team and we started to build from there. And we grew the company from $0 to $9 million in a matter of few years. For me, it was the first experience of being an entrepreneur, really starting the team from scratch. So it was very exciting. I learned a lot. I really learned one thing that I learned very much was that for a company to be successful, you need to have a great culture in the company. So at the end of my stint, when I exited from the company in 2018, I decided to start on my own. Now that I had the experience of how to do it, I said, okay, let me do it again. I can do it now on my own. So I started the company, Trika Technologies, and we focused on cloud-based technologies. And obviously, technologies has moved so much in these years from the on-prem to initial cloud and composable and headless space. So I invested in that. And now we're about 80 people, a big company. It's doing pretty well. And we focus a lot on the B2B, B2C, Omni, OMS solutions, right? So that's the background of how I got into it. It was more accidental, to be honest. I didn't think of starting a company. It was offered to me, can you start a company? And I said, you know what? I'll take up the challenge and do it. And here I am.
Wow. Love the backstory, love the scratching an itch, love the wanting to prove something to the world and to yourself. And after having built two companies with the help of others and with the guidance and support of others, now, okay, look, let's go and do this on our own. Let's go out into the big bad world and see what we can achieve. So do you consider yourself an agency, an SI? Do you consider yourself a strategy company, a consultancy, or all of the above?
I think it's a mix of all of the above, right? Where our services start really are from the strategy side. We don't do strategy like the lights of the world, but our strategy is very specific to what the company is trying to do. We do a lot of assessment of their current stack, both from technical standpoint, from data, from SEO, and from all the different aspects. In a typical consulting word, you'll call that as targeting operating model. We have our own target operating model. So we do the assessment and then define the target operating model for the company and then help them get to a place where they know what they need to do, what their roadmap is. And then once we are done with that, we start doing the execution like a typical SI, where we would really define the initial phase, build the initial phase, do the UX, do the SEO, do the technical build, do the enablement, all the different pieces that goes into an implementation lifecycle.
Yeah, this is like really hardcore, typical SI stuff here,
Yeah.
but there's two things that leap out at me. And in all transparency, we've never worked on a joint project or client together, but there's probably two to three things that leap out to me immediately when I visit your website. First of all, as opposed to pitching solution architecture for a specific piece of the commerce stack, you say, look, we focus on enterprise architecture. Now, I love that because most of the businesses that I consult to, and I'm sure many of the businesses you go into, they don't have an enterprise architect on staff. In fact, they oftentimes have never thought about enterprise architecture holistically across the enterprise. And in fact, what we see is we see shadow IT, we see tiny little pockets of IT, we see silos of data in IT across the business. And as a result of that, oftentimes businesses have implemented individual point solutions to fix an immediate issue or a challenge or a problem or an opportunity within the business, but they've never thought about the holistic impact of deploying that piece of technology or that new process on the rest of the business. And oftentimes when I get in there, I'm looking at this hodgepodge patchwork quilt of technology across the business and I go, wow, okay, we've got basically a bowl of spaghetti here that we have to try to make work together in a meaningful way, or we have to try to consolidate and rationalize technology within the business to remove some of the complexity and some of the sheer volume of integration endpoints that we have to think about. I'm all about not trying to boil the ocean and all that. So I love that. I love the fact that instead of saying, hey, we're just purely like commerce solution architects, no, we take an enterprise architecture view of your business, which is this 30,000-foot view before we ever get into the nitty gritty of delivery. Second thing I notice, almost zero. In fact, I don't think I saw a single mention of AI. No, sorry. It's three-quarters of the way down the page. AI and machine learning is mentioned once. So I love the fact that you haven't snapped just purely the shiny thing and said, oh, let's do AI for AI's sake. That's the second thing that stands out to me. The third thing that stands out to me is that you build on the VTEX platform. Now, I'm sure you build on other platforms too, but I love the fact that you're building on a modern, best of breed, multi-tenant SaaS, natively headless on its own stack platform that is fit for business purpose these days. One of the things that I really admire and respect about VTEX is that they have never moved away from the modular monolith suite-based model, right? In the face of this whole world, if we look back 2-3 years ago, pretty much the buzz on everybody's lips before AI was headless and composable. I think the world started to understand within the last 12 to 18 months, especially as money started to have a value again and capital started to have a cost again and IT budgets were constrained. Now all of a sudden everybody went, do we really need to do headless? Do we really need to be fully composable? Or should we be going with a stack that is largely pre-composed but decomposable where we want to implement best of breed point solutions into that stack? Does it break the entire stack? And I had Mariano from VTEX on the podcast recently where we were talking about his shot heard around the world, where he was basically where they famously left the Mock Alliance and really started the dialogue pretty bluntly about the fact that well over 50% of headless projects fail simply because the cost, the complexity are too high, the time to value is too slow, and most of these businesses and brands, they do not have sufficient internal IT capability to be able to deliver these projects on time, on budget, and be able to run these systems and solutions over the long term without total dependence on an SI partner to do so. There's been lots of evolution in our industry over the last few years, but those are the key points that I would call out about how you pitch yourselves to the world. So maybe you can give me your thoughts on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought up a lot of good points here. One is the architecture piece. I think that's the backbone of everything, in my opinion. If you don't have your architecture, you're going to be reinventing and doing a lot of spaghetti stuff over a period of time. And then 5 years down the line, you'll realize that what you have is an unmanageable system. And believe it or not, I think most of the companies start properly, maybe in the right way, but then along the way, somewhere down the line, they are adding more things to it. They don't think through the architectural changes that they need to do and end up in that state. So it's an important aspect. Think about the architecture upfront and think about the future upfront, to be honest, to be able to be future proof, as we call it. So that's a very important aspect. And we spend a lot of time during the initial phase to do that. The second part, you mentioned AI. Yeah, it's a big buzzword right now. There's a lot of money that has been pumped into the industry for AI. And there are a lot of solutions out there. I still think that companies are still trying to figure out how to use AI effectively. For me, the most important thing that they need to figure out before they figure out how to implement AI is to how to get an access, a right, proper access to the data. Because data is the key. Unless you have a proper data in place, the AI is not really going to be very useful, right? So you may have some agentic stuff and few things here and there you may do, which is good. It's a quick success you can get. But if you really want to utilize the power of AI, you just need to have the data in the right place. And we have done some work and we can talk about it at some point in terms of how we approach that particular area. And the third thing you mentioned about composability, and I know as 5, 6 years been, then it was composable solution. Then there are a lot of, Mark came and the fact that do you really have a team to support that? Do you really want to put all the Legos to start with, find the Legos, try to fix the Legos and try to build the puzzle? I think pragmatic composability is what Mariano says, which I really agree with, is that you start with an architecture which is composable in it, right? Composability is part of it, but it doesn't mean that you need to reinvent and put every piece, to start with. You can use certain things that most of these e-commerce providers provide. For example, Vtex, it does provide a lot in search. It provides a built-in CMS. It provides a bunch of integrations. It provides an IO platform that helps you integrate. It provides a lot of things. So you can do and go with your MVP. What an MVP word was also overly used, but you go with something that would make sense, right? And then from there, you can figure out, okay, what pieces, let's say search. Now, I really want to hone into a search piece of it. Let me see what are the providers out there. Is my platform flexible enough to replace the native search with a proper search provider? Those are the things you do as a part of next week. If you try to do everything up a very long drawn affair, it's going to be very expensive. It doesn't really give you the ROI, to be honest, to start with. So first build, see how it works, test, and then figure out which areas do you want to be take out and replace it with best of the breed, for example.
Yeah, and it's interesting because especially in the B2B world, which is something I've been focusing on super heavily for nearly 5 years now, what I find is that any of the major platform vendors that are suite based, whether it's Vtex, whether it's Better Commerce, whether it's Foundation, doesn't really matter who we're talking about here. The reality is that in most instances, they are good enough for circa 80 plus percent of use cases, 90 plus percent of use cases. And in many instances, B2Bs are coming to me and they've never done e-commerce before. They really don't offer any meaningful digital services layer to their customers. It's all relationship driven. It's all sales rep driven. It's all account management driven. It's all customer service driven. And as a result of that, anything that they would implement would be a significant step forward versus what they offer today. And so when I maybe okay in the B2C and D2C world, most of those businesses, something like 90 plus percent of retail businesses, whether it's B2C or D2C, now offer an e-commerce experience. I think the latest statistic I could dig up was somewhere around 95%, whereas less than 60%, depending on the data that you're looking at, of manufacturers and distributors offer a meaningful self-service e-commerce solution, even if they already offer EDI or punch out. Many of them don't offer a self-service e-commerce solution or a portalized experience. And so we're starting from such a lower level when we start thinking about B2Bs. We're starting from such a more nascent, immature place of digital transformation within these businesses that implementing almost anything other than just an ERP, which is what the beating heart of all these B2B businesses is, the ERP. That's the reality. Implementing any kind of a commerce solution that is actually workable for their business, that they can actually meaningfully adopt both internally and externally with their customers. That to me is such a huge hurdle to get over. Just that first phase implementation of getting some kind of customer facing commerce solution up and running. It's such a heavy lift for these businesses that it's a win kind of any way you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have examples of the same thing that you mentioned there. We're working with and we work with B2B companies that absolutely have zero digital presence. I'm surprised that it's up to 60%. I would have thought it's much lower than that. But yeah, it's a very classic thing, right? Some people will have some sort of a self-service portal, and a lot of them do not even have really a self-service portal. Majority of their business is through your customer service agents, your emails, and all of that, punch outs in some cases. And ERP is the heartbeat, right? It's kind of is that when we go to a customer, which is completely greenfield, we try to understand what their current processes are, because their processes are not really aligned with the self-service kind of a model, right? So you have to figure that piece out, and it's very difficult. There are multiple different groups and people in the company that have their own siloed work that they're doing, and it's important to get everybody on the same page. I'll give an example. Like one of the clients that we're working with, when I went to my first call, a discovery call with them, there were 50 people on the call. It was like amazing how many people were on the call, and it's a pretty big company. They're doing very well, but it's just that there were so many stakeholders, internal stakeholders within the company, and everybody was handling certain piece. Somebody's handling logistics, somebody's handling catalog, whatever, right? Somebody's handling ERP, and everybody has a different priority. Everybody has a different mindset of what they want the site to look like. So the most challenging part, in my opinion, is really to get all of them aligned and bought into the vision. And one of the things that is important, like if these companies are going into this journey of getting digital, they need to have a digital practitioner of some kind within the company. If the company does not have anybody who has done this before, it's very hard, right? So I think that's the first step. These companies, they need to have somebody who has done this before, and is the person who can actually internally educate. You cannot educate so many people within the company. You can educate a bunch of them who can then propagate and get a buy-in from various different people. So that's number one. And number two is the process is slow, right? You cannot really think of going a big bang approach and everything has to be there. All the different countries have to be there. All the different things, all the different businesses have to be. It cannot be a big bang go live approach. When you build a basic minimum viable product, which you think which will suffice a majority of the use cases, you then go in and then roll it out very slowly. You cannot just do a big bang approach. You have to onboard the customers slowly. You have to test the system out, get the feedback, and it's exactly what we're doing, right? We've rolled out multiple B2B sites, and we've gone it very slowly. I know it is people want to see results right away, but that's not the right approach. You will get into disaster. And some of the companies that we work with, they had taken that approach in the past and failed, and the whole digital took a backseat. But in this case, it took time. I won't say it was like a 6 month thing. It took time, but it was a very slow process where we onboarded customers, and we continue to do that. And when everybody's comfortable, most of the functionalities that you need for phase one are there, then you roll it out with the rest of the people. So yeah, you're right. It's a different world. It's different from B2B and B2C and D2C kind of a world.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. In some of the ways in which I've seen that sort of de-scoped phase one work, it's either a subset of customers that will be your test phase customers, almost like your design partners. If you were building a SaaS platform, you would have design partners that would be your first 5 or less customers that would help you develop the product, help you find product market fit, help you find the approach that's actually going to work, that's actually going to build a solid, stable, growing business. And I think if these businesses can take more of a product development mindset or a product management mindset versus a project or program management mindset, they're going to end up in a much better place in many instances, because what we're doing is we're actually building a product. We're building a product in the business that is going to work both internally for our teams, but also for our customers. And it has to work equally well for both sides of the equation. Otherwise, you're never going to get sufficient adoption on both sides to make the investment worthwhile. And it's not a one and done investment anyway. This is a long term, sustained program of work. There is going to be no end. There is no, it's not like you build it, you set it up, you get everybody logged in, and that's it. You're done and dusted, right? This is a forever program of work. This is a forever program of staying modern, staying relevant to your customers. And if you're a traditional B2B that's second, third generation family B2B, you're a 50, 75, 100-year-old family-owned manufacturer or distributor, and you've done things the same way without a lot of technology for that length of time, you're already playing catch up. You've already got technical debt from day one. And the reality is you need to understand mentally, emotionally, viscerally, you have to understand this is not going to be a one and done project. This is a forever program of work that it is. What I try to tell them is, look, we're trying to graft. It's like a tree, right? We're trying to graft digital DNA onto an analog business. That's what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, your competitors, many of them, especially the latest and greatest competitors that have launched within the last 5 years, they have digital DNA at their heart. They were born with digital DNA. They didn't have to graft anything on. They were digital from day one, right? Now, if you're a business that we're trying to graft digital DNA onto, there's going to be some, it's kind of somebody getting a replacement heart or somebody getting a replacement liver or a replacement kidney or something like that, right? The
Yeah.
body sometimes can reject that, right?
Yeah.
It can reject it. You have to take these drugs to allow the body to accept this as part of the whole, right? And that's exactly the same process. And it is literally that painful for a business as if we're changing a kidney, as if we're changing a liver, as if we're changing a heart. In many instances, it feels that painful to the business from a change management perspective. But if you want to have even a chance of being relevant to your customers as of 2025 and beyond, it's table stakes now. And that's the thing I'm trying to communicate is you're not going to leapfrog competitors just by offering an amazing self-service experience, an amazing digital services layer. You are still playing catch up with most of the market. And these are the very difficult conversations you have to have right up front. Thankfully I've never had a discovery where I had 50 people. I think the largest discovery workshop I've ever had was where like 15 stakeholders were in the room. And that was hard enough. I can't imagine trying to make decisions by a committee of 50. That seems almost impossible. Really, it's about getting the subject matter experts around the table at the same time. And funnily enough, and I'd love your take on this, when I run discovery, in my discovery, my initial questionnaire is around 150 questions. I'd like to think they're some of the best in the industry because I think if you ask better questions, you get better answers. But oftentimes I get clients telling me, I learned more. I learned so much about my business I didn't even know before. I didn't even know the C suite. They're going, I didn't even know that's how we did that thing anymore. I had no idea that's how we did that thing. I had no idea we had challenges in this area of our business until it came out during discovery, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of the C suite is so busy just trying to get through the day to day operational nightmare of running their business that they don't get a chance to take a very holistic view that often. And sometimes they relish that opportunity.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Of working with a number of B2B companies, you understand what the landscape looks like. And from that landscape, you can build a proper, what I called earlier, target operating model for B2B, right? So it has all the possible different groups within the company, what they do on a day-to-day basis, what their needs are, and what you put the questions or requirements around that and say, this is a full spectrum of 1,000 requirements, for example, that a B2B would, based on the initial discussions, what is relevant among all of these for this company, right? There may be certain things that are more relevant, there may be certain things that may not be relevant, right? And once you figure that out, your questions become very specific. And then they also understand what others may be doing, right? Because you have a big bank or database of what people have been doing, they get ideas. Okay, maybe I can change this process, and maybe this is not the most efficient process of handling it. Maybe the process is something different. And I can adopt that process into my process. And that's the piece that they learn going through this journey. So discovery is a very important aspect of it. You start from here of what a B2B can do, and then you get to here where you understand what's more relevant for their business. And then you get to this and say, okay, this is the base platform or base requirements, that website that we will go, self-help website that we will go with, and get a buy-in there. There will always be a little bit of push and pull in terms of, okay, we want this or we don't want this kind of a thing. There'll always be there. But that's part of the process. It's part of the process to get an alignment. It's part of the process to sell into some of these stakeholders internally and say, this is the right thing for do. Let's do it this way because we have done it and this is successful.
And what percentage of your customers today are B2B manufacturers and distributors versus B2C, D2C customers? Is it like a fairly even split? Is it like 90% B2C, 10% B2B? What does that split look like for you guys?
I think at this point of time, it's more even split, but we're seeing a lot more traction on the B2B side. As you said, Vtex, and we also work with Kibo. All these companies are now really putting their focus on the B2B companies. They feel that's a market that's been largely untapped because of various reasons, right? Every B2B business thinks that they are different, and they are, right? Every business is different. They have their certain different way of acquiring customers. There's a different way of ordering, different checkout process, different pricing, different catalog configurations, and all of that. So these companies are now basically focusing and seeing that market. And we're also seeing more B2B people, prospects that are in the pipeline that need this kind of help. So it's moving more towards B2B. I think D2C is much more evolved. They have done this multiple times in last 20, 25 years.
Yes.
B2B, some of them are even actually doing it for the first time. Some of them have some base types, but they want to get to more modern side. they're expecting a more B2C kind of an experience for B2B customers as well, with added functionality of reorders and POs and organization management. All those things
Price
are coming to
list,
B2B. Yeah, price
well,
list, custom
MOQs,
catalogs.
buying increments, all the complex things that you
Also,
get in
yeah,
the B2B
yeah.
world.
But yeah, we're seeing more traction. B2B is actually looking to invest more in, modernizing their stack. So yeah, there's more. I would say in maybe next 3 years we might have it more.
Yeah, what you're talking about is totally true. Just interestingly, Kibo is a relatively new client of mine that I'm working with, and I'm helping with specifically their B2B side of their business. And I'm helping specifically with go-to-market messaging, positioning, pricing, product roadmap, everything to do with B2B, because that they actually see that themselves, that B2B presents a more significant market opportunity over the next 10 years than the past 10 years where it was dominated by B2C and D2C. They're seeing the market change. And as you rightly point out, in the B2C and D2C world, very few of those projects are greenfields projects,
Yeah,
right? They've got some kind of incumbent technology. They're replatforming.
yeah,
They are, and in most instances, whether you're a brand new B2C, D2C startup or whether you're a 50-year-old company, the vast majority of those are moving to Shopify. That's the reality of the market. And when you have such a dominant player like a Shopify in that space, it doesn't leave a ton of greenfields opportunity for anybody else. And so, whether Shopify is an incumbent or whether they're looking to replace an incumbent, they have the mind share, the heart share, and the market share right now. And they're a bit of a juggernaut, and they've managed
yeah.
to turn the narrative around AI, et cetera. And so it's hard to get your nose in there with kind of any other solution, even if that other solution may be 10x more appropriate for those use cases. Shopify is just so hard to pitch against. It really is these days. But I like the fact that in the B2B world, we don't have a single major player. We now have 30 plus major players in the B2B e-commerce space. And I don't expect that to last. There's too much feature and function overlap in the major B2B platforms out there today. I expect there to be mass consolidation in the B2B world, both from a platform perspective and an SI perspective. We've already seen Zaylab make two huge B2B acquisitions over the last 2 years, starting with Trellis and then their latest competitor SI acquisition in the B2B world. So I expect there to be incredible consolidation from a platform and an SI perspective. Do you expect that to also be the case over the next couple of years?
It's hard to say if there'll be a consolidation. I would say there will be a lot more focus of a lot of these companies on the B2B space. Now, whether that leads to acquisition of some kind is yet to be seen. Not 100% sure. I can't really say with most conviction. There is definitely features and functionality sets that are getting built within the commerce platforms that are focused on B2B. There are pre-composed solutions also there. I understand that you cannot really have a completely pre-composed solution for B2B, but then there is a lot you can do and we have our own B2B store that we are using now. Because that kind of helps us start at a certain starting point that will help them even visualize how their brand is going to look like. The single page checkouts of the world, for example, or managing your organization as a self-service. These things are built into the platform now, getting built into the platform is supporting it. So there will be a reduced, I would say, TCO to do B2Bs because of the focus of these platforms. But whether there will be consolidation, I don't think I would, I don't, I would, frankly would not know. But there will be more focus for sure. And we already seen that. And so much has changed in the last 5 years from a B2B perspective. So much focus. I've been talking about B2B for some time, but now I actually really see the traction happening on the B2B space.
Man, I couldn't agree more. As I've been in the industry for 25 years. For the last five, really hardcore, focusing, doubling, tripling down on the B2B world as part of my independent consultancy work. And yeah, even I, as someone who lives primarily in the B2B world every single day in, day out, I've seen the feature and functionality parity of the major B2B platforms is pretty astonishing to watch. Almost all of them have some form of a PIM. Almost all of them have a very good OMS. Almost all of them have obviously storefront capabilities. Almost all of them have some form of Salesforce automation, not Salesforce the platform, but Salesforce automation built in within the platform to enable salespeople to have superpowers and automate a lot of the manual tasks that they have historically done directly in ERPs. We're starting to see an emergence of agentic even. We look at the likes of the Kibos of the world and even other platforms that have really gone all in on the agentic side of the business because they know That's where the market's going. ChatGPT has announced their commerce APIs. They're working with Shopify on that. We have a lot of these major AI players that have launched their own agentic platforms independent of commerce. And now I feel like the buyer side of the equation is going to change really quickly. The Jaggers, the Coupas, the Ariba's of the world, they're going to build buying agents into their technology. And if unless your sell side can integrate and speak to the buyer's agent digitally and electronically, it's like the old days of EDI. In fact, EDI is still a significant portion of B2B business today. You look at the likes of Zorro, for example, you can't even sell to Zorro. You just cannot sell to them. They will not allow you to sell to them unless you can integrate with them via EDI. And they have a very strict integration playbook and very strict syntax, very strict mappings. It's all very strict. And so there's a lot of this that still happens in the B2B world. And I think my sense is that a lot of the traditional EDI business is going to move to more of an agentic communication channel. So I almost look at agentic as the new EDI. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's true. EDI has been there forever. And
Yeah.
I feel that some of the areas when it comes to the EDI piece, the punch out and all of that, those can definitely be taken up by agentic. Yeah, the important thing is for us to understand from an agentic world where all can be focused on, where all things can be, where you can bring in AI, to be honest. But the point that you also mentioned is how do you connect the buy side to the sell side? I think there is this aspect of connector that needs to be there somehow. And there are companies, I don't know if it's public, but there are some companies, the commerce companies that are building some of these connectors, the EDI connectors within the platform itself to be able to consume that. Can be one way to handle that as well. But there are connectors as well that are there.
Yeah, and I'm seeing new platforms come to market in the last year and a half. Platforms like Motivate that are automating a lot of the Salesforce automation process, where they're automating order management via email, Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, etc., where they're modernizing these more traditional communication channels, for lack of a better term, in the e-commerce, the B2B e-commerce world. It feels like a lot of that's being automated away because these traditional channels in the B2B world, they're not going away anytime soon. WhatsApp's not going to go away. Slack's not going to go away. Teams is not going to go away. Email is not going to go away in the B2B world
Yeah.
anytime soon. But the great thing is with AI, especially multimodal AI, that can grab the PDF off of the email, they can grab the spreadsheet off of the email, they can automatically parse it, they can automatically map it into the commerce system as if the customer logged in into the portal and placed the order themselves. Now, the middleware, for lack of a better term, can do that interpretation, and it's really impressive. It's far better than the traditional OCR days where a human almost always had to be involved at some stage of the process to validate and verify the data as part of the ETL process. But now multimodal AI is getting so good that the requirement for human interaction is lower than it's ever been, and it's only going to get lower. And so these are the types of things I think that are very practical uses. This is not pie in the sky
Yeah, yeah.
5 year from now AI stuff.
It's
This is
already
stuff that
there.
you can implement today to make you more efficient and to the thing I love about this is it does not require any behavioral change by your customers. They can continue to do things the way they always have, but now with multimodal AI, you can bring them into your digital ecosystem without them even realizing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's where agents will be very helpful, where you can actually take up a very maybe even unstructured data in many
Yes,
ways and
100%.
structure, yeah, and structure it completely and use the APIs to push the order or whatever that is. There are AI models that can read through PDFs and read through emails and then probably create orders out of that. And I think the starting point definitely is connector, but then agentic connectors would definitely be helpful in this, which will reduce a lot of manual intervention. Now you get an email from a customer and you have to put that order in the place in the ERP. That whole process can be automated and it'll reduce a lot of manual intervention and even errors, right? As a part of that, right? There's definitely a lot of scope and these things are not going anywhere. People will always be there. They'll have different channels of ordering. Self-service is a part of it, but that doesn't replace the complete business, right? So you need to find these creative solutions from an AI perspective, how to address those areas as well.
No question about it. How do you use AI in your personal life today? And I'll just give you an example in my own life. Like I haven't used Google search in probably well over 6 months. So I'm a subscriber, ChatGPT Plus. I have a plugin in my Brave browser that redirects all my queries directly to ChatGPT. And so therefore, I haven't used a Google search I can't remember the last time I did a Google search. So in my own life, I'm using Grok, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using some other AI first tooling, Squadcast AI first. When we think of the editing of digital content, I'm using a lot of AI first platforms from WriteBlogger to Descript to Opus Clip. From a content perspective, using tons of AI tools. Where in your personal life slash professional life are you using a lot of AI tooling today to understand better where this is all headed?
Yeah. I mean, as you said, the need to use a regular search engine has gone down quite a bit because you have very tailored questions that you're trying to ask to the AI, and you get a very tailored response. So I've tried a few of them. I've tried Gemini, I've tried the ChatGPT, and I've also tried DeepSeek. And it's fascinating to see how their responses are different. And depending on what I'm trying to do, I'll use one of them. For example, for Gemini, I do have a paid version that I use. So I would say 40 to 50% I use Gemini, and maybe another 30-40% ChatGPT, and then maybe 10% of DeepSeek sometimes. Yeah, and sometimes they don't have correct information. I've seen that as well. I've actually posted some time ago that two of them did not have the correct information. One of them did have the correct information, just to check it out and see how a basic common knowledge, how would they react to that. But yeah, in terms of how we use it, we use a lot. I use a lot of ChatGPT or Gemini, for example, writing blog articles. So you know how long it takes to write a blog article. You have to proofread it. You have to make sure that this is right. There's not anything relevant. So what I do generally write a draft of whatever I need to write and then put it there. And it gives me suggestions and tells me, okay, this can be better written or whatever. So you use that in that sense. I also have generated a lot of infographics using that, especially Gemini. Like I'll say, okay, this is the piece that I'm trying to communicate. Can you generate an infographic? Can you use these fonts? Can you use these colors? And it would do that. And it does a great job. So some of these things, day-to-day stuff, writing blogs or researching on something, it's an excellent tool. We're also using exploring AI within the company of trying to solve certain use cases for the products that we have built. We have a couple of products that are in this space. One of the products we've been working on for a couple of years is around the integration, which I feel is one area that really, there are so many, there's iPaaS of the world. There is your middlewares, traditional middlewares, and none of them really have a 100% solution. So we came up with a different solution, which is more dynamic in nature. We don't have pre-built connectors. You can build your connectors on the fly. So we are exploring AI in that. How do you, if there is a file coming in, for example, and if there is a data source that you've created, can AI map them correctly, right?
Mhm.
Or can AI do a lot of anomaly detection within the logs, right? If the systems are running and if we see something that's not following the same pattern. So we're exploring from a company perspective, those use cases that will be more relevant for our customers rather than some jazz. But yeah, it's like it's taken over. No, not just me. My kids, they use AI too. A lot of it now, even for the school thing.
Yeah, and from a content perspective, especially from a blog perspective, I'm working the other direction, which is that so my raw material for my blog articles is my podcast. And the great thing about uploading to YouTube is the YouTube auto transcribes all the content and behind the scenes, even if you don't leverage that transcription, it's always there and it can be grabbed via AI. And I use Write Blogger. I point it at the URL of
Transcribe.
my transcription, actually, you just pointed at the URL of the actual video itself. It will grab the transcription. It will basically paraphrase or turn that content, that 1 hour's worth of content, into a blog article. Then that gets me maybe 80 to 90% of the way
Yeah.
there. Then what I'll do, and it even samples my content and generates a unique voice based on samples of my content, meaning the style, the language I use, the banter that I typically use. It will sample my content so that what it writes as a first draft sounds like it's actually me the way that I would normally speak. And that's really good. And then that gets me 80, 90% of the way there. Then I'll go through that abbreviated blog article. I'll fix any names, spelling of any names, spelling of any companies. I'll just make sure it's 100% bang on. Then what I do is when I create the blog article on my website from that content, I will embed the full YouTube video in the base of that article. So if somebody wants to watch the full video as opposed to really the cliff notes as a
Yeah.
blog article, then they can watch the whole video right then and there. So I find that going that direction for me works super well, and it's generating content from my content. And so effectively repurposing content I've already created into something new, into a new format. And I think AI is very good at that.
Yeah, I agree. The idea is yours, the content is yours. How you present it, that's the help that you need. I'm actually done few times what I've done. If I have to put a presentation together, what I would do is I would basically pick up an audio thing or a meeting, Google Meet or something. I would just speak to it, right? I'll
Yeah.
speak whatever is stream of consciousness, and I'll just
Yes.
dump it on it and say, you know what, can you just structure this in a more presentable format, right? Because when you are doing extempore, your brain is moving in multiple different directions. You're not really thinking, okay, I have to say this and then this. Instead of now going through that and trying to figure out, okay, how do I present this? I can use this tool to now structure it. And it provides a beautiful structure. And then you obviously have to work on it. It's not there, but you have to work on it. But it gives you a good framework to start with.
Yes. Getting from 0 to 1 is a lot easier now with AI, and obviously the human side, the creative side can get it from 2 to 5 or 2 to 10 from there, but definitely I think the starting point is super helpful. Where if you were to look at 6, 12, 18 months in your own practice, what do you see as the key priorities for you to be able to continue to stay relevant to your customers? I'm seeing a lot of clients think they can do some of this stuff in-house because they've got AI, whatever. What do you see as the changing opportunity for SIs to continue to bring value to their customers in the face of this onslaught of AI?
That's a great question. In fact, I was in a conference recently and we had this question come up again. And what I have at least done internally with the team is that a few months ago, we started to look at what tools can we use from an AI agentic perspective that can help us building code, for example, build requirements, do a lot of the things that takes a lot of time. And then what that does really is it makes you more efficient. So if your cost is lowered. So for example, let's say a particular build takes me $500,000. Let's say it's a $500,000 build for the client. Now I can go back to the customer, let's say in 12 months or 18 months and say, you know what, I can do this build for you for $300,000 because now I'm more efficient in writing my code. I'm more efficient in documenting stuff. I'm more efficient in doing a lot of things using AI. As I call it, agentic SI, right? I'm an
Yeah.
agentic SI. And then my cost has gone down from, let's say, 300 to 100K, right? I'm
Yeah.
making the same margins and the customer is getting the benefit out of it. And I can scale faster. Now I can handling 5 customers, I can handle 10 customers. So that's the road that we're going into. Our team has been using a lot of these core tools to build code. They're there, but the codes, at least the ones that we've been using, are a little bit more a junior developer would write. So I think
Yes.
there's a little bit more progression that is required to get to that level, but I think it's moving really quickly. And we want to prepare ourselves to be more agile, more cost effective, and be able to scale very quickly and to support more than the customers that we can support at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and even as a consultancy, I'm always asking myself, how can we be more AI first? How can we leverage AI tooling to make, as you say, not only to make us more efficient, but when we're doing research, for example, okay, cool. How can we become more efficient at doing the research, pulling in the data, crunching the numbers, and even you might have historically, so before ChatGPT, Grok, etc., if I had a research report that was, I don't know, let's say hypothetically, it was a 100-page PDF, and I was looking for a specific piece of information within that PDF, I would open it up in Acrobat, I would do Control F, and then I would look for like specific keywords related to the specific pieces of data I was looking for.
Yeah.
But now with ChatGPT, I can upload the PDF to ChatGPT and I can ask it questions
Yes.
about the data. And I can say, can you summarize this piece of information? Can you pull out this specific piece of data related to this thing or this use case or this opportunity? Can you summarize that for me and then tell me where in the document the reference point is for that information? And so it's like it cuts down my research time probably by greater than 50%. And it makes me so much more efficient with my research time. It's pretty phenomenal. And all even if I've got a Google Doc, for example, that I'm working on, instead of copying and pasting out the text out of that Google Doc. So let's say I'm working on a BRD, or let's say I'm working on a solution architecture piece, or let's say I'm working on a consulting piece, and I want to make sure I haven't missed anything critical, or that I could rewrite it in a more understandable way or something like that. I will spit that Google Doc out as a PDF. I'll upload the PDF to ChatGPT and I'll say, improve this, make this better, make it more readable, make it more understandable. Is there anything key that I've missed here that I shouldn't miss out? Is there anything here that would make this more easily understandable for this target type of customer? And I'll give it a very specific remit of the advice that it gives back to me. And I find that the more detailed I am in the prompt, the better the result I get. And it's almost like the early days of Google, right? None of us were expert Googlers from day one. Like, we had to learn how Google worked. It took a while to get the best out of Google because we had to go through enough queries to figure out how Google liked to give responses and how it structured the data behind the responses. And so eventually, those of us that started out in the industry in the early days of Google, we became expert Googlers. And I feel you almost still to this day have to be a little bit of an expert prompt engineer to get really good things out of AI. But I think even that's going to change. I give it another 6, 8, 9, 12 months. You won't have to be as good at prompting as you are today to get great results from AI. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the key in as far as the usage of your AI is concerned. I think you have to have the right prompts in place. You need to be able to get to the next level. You start at a certain point and then you dig deeper. You know what they're coming back. Even if I'm, for example, trying to define a message, for example, let's say I'm defining some sort of a blog and it comes back with something, right? And say, I want this, and it comes back with something. Then I need to be able to read and say, okay, can you refine this further? Can you summarize this better? Can you reduce by 50%? I don't want this thing. Can you focus a little bit more on this particular aspect? There are so many things. The prompt is, and it's up to you what you want. And at the end of the day, it depends on what you want. And what you want is something that you can ask, tweak, and train. So I absolutely agree to be able to really get the best result. And it's a learning process as well, right? You do it few times, you know exactly how to train and get the right output that you're looking for, right? And I do agree that it will change and things will get even smarter. And you may not, it will probably understand you exactly what, you know, who
The
you
way
are.
that you think.
Exactly. And it'll probably give you a better response. So instead of taking 10 iterations, maybe in 3 iterations, you may get.
You've just described AI lock-in. Like, I would be loath to move away from ChatGPT now because it knows so much about me and it has such a large context window of previous interactions that it does, and it's asked me enough times, do you like response A
Yeah,
or
yeah.
response B better? And I've had to make that choice enough times now to where it already knows me so well that it was almost like the early days of Google lock-in. Once you started using Google, it was so damn good
Yeah.
and it started to adapt so well to the way that you interacted with it that everything else just disappeared from the market. And I think that is the new form of AI lock-in, is the amount of time and energy you put into training your AI. You're going to be loath because they're not going to share that. They're not going to. It should be your training data, but it's only locked into that single AI platform. That's the new form of technical lock-in that I see.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that's going to be the case. That's going to be the future. Absolutely.
Wow. Listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. We've had almost an hour of chatting. It's absolutely flown by. If people want to get a hold of you, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes as well as to your website, Trika website, in the show notes. Other than that, how do you like to get people to get a hold of you and have a conversation about all things digital?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach is through the email and reach out. We're always looking to do things better. We're always trying to make our customers' life much better. So any problem you have, there's no thing that, yeah, we want your business. We want to help you, right? If you think that there is something that we can help you with and it turns into a business, that's great. But it's a more consultative mindset that we have. We want to help our customers get better. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So, Anubhav Raina from Trika Technologies, what is your question for me today?
I think another question that we've been grappling through for some time is the integration piece, right? I think that is an area that has not really matured. It has come a long way, but it's still not there. People spend still about 60 to 70% of their time and money in integrating. So what's your thought? Like, where do you think that this industry of the middleware, the iPaaS is going to go from here? Because there's a lot of time and effort that gets spent building it and then managing it from that point onwards.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. In fact, one of my clients is an iPaaS platform vendor and agency that delivers integration solutions. And you're 100% right. In my experience, greater than, especially in complex B2B projects, greater than 50% of a project's budget is often spent just on system integration. That's it.
Yeah.
ERP, CRM, PIM, CDPs, the full business stack. And oftentimes these B2Bs will have more than one ERP. They'll have 2, 3 ERPs in the business, depending on the technologies or depending on the products that they're selling, the verticals they're selling into, etc. So it's wild just how complex and expensive and time consuming the integration portion of projects can get. So I totally agree with you there. I'm already starting to work with some of these iPaaS vendors around agentic AI-led integrations, meaning, okay, I want to be able to speak an integration into existence. I want an agent to be able to understand all of our thousands of previous integrations, the way we architected it. I want to be able to even upload my BRDs. I want to be able to upload my solution diagrams, my solution architecture documentation, and basically allow the agent to learn from all the 20 years of work we've done before. And so therefore, it's got a really great starting point for building the lattice, at least for any new integration, and standing up the key endpoints, whether it's NetSuite or D365 or whatever it is, at least standing up, authenticating, getting the key endpoints up and running, getting at least a predefined set of data points mapped from customer data, product data, fulfillment data, all that stuff, getting all the primary data points configured with a deep understanding of the API framework of the originating platform and the destination platform and vice versa. I think that is going to be the way. So not only is AI coming to the existing iPaaS platforms, but a lot more of the commerce technology providers are going to have out-of-the-box integrations in their platform that are really robust, because historically, out-of-the-box integrations have been pretty rubbish. Like, they're not complete. They're not complete enough. They're not flexible enough. They're not scalable enough.
Yeah.
And so in most instances, you still need a third-party iPaaS to get to that level of flexibility and scalability without being locked in to either your SI or the platform vendor, the core platform vendor. And so having ownership of that plumbing is really important to businesses. And having the flexibility in that plumbing is really important to businesses. So yeah, there's some agentic AI stuff coming to the iPaaS world and to the platform vendors themselves, the commerce platform vendors themselves. And I think I'm already starting to work with some of them. There's a company called Relevance AI, and they are at the forefront of agentic AI right now as it relates to particularly SaaS platforms and in integrating agentic AI into your SaaS workflows. So it's still really early, but agentic is progressing super quick. And the one cool thing about Relevance is you can run multi-agent work streams as part of an overarching workflow in parallel.
Yes.
You can have massive parallelization of the agents that you deploy, which makes them extremely efficient, because you can have them doing micro tasks instead of trying to have one agent that rules them all. You can have a whole lot of agents working in parallel doing micro tasks, and it makes them much more efficient and makes it much faster. And that's a super cool thing that's happening today.
Yeah.
And RPA is being replaced by agents too. So robotic process automation, where it usually took a really complex RPA platform to be able to do human level work inside of a web-based platform, or a platform that didn't have an API, for example, but you needed to go through some sort of a UI to do things. Agentic is picking up where RPA left off, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Listen, loved our time together. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to speak to you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Cheers. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.